Hey, I'm Dr. Ruth Roberts, the creator of the original Crock Pet diet, and with me today is Dr. Will Falconer, who of the Vital Path, and I am delighted to have you here today, Will.
Thanks, Ruth. It's great to be here.
Well, good. And Will is in India, so you may notice a few seconds of delay here and there, but amazing technology keeps us connected even though we're how many thousands of miles and hours apart. So yeah,
Right.
just ignore the man in the booth. But at any rate, the reason I wanted to talk with Will today is he's been in veterinary medicine for probably about 10 years longer than I have, and realized that what veterinary school had trained us for, while it's super if you've got a laceration or something of that nature, really does not much for protecting the health of pets as far as preventing diseases that shouldn't be an issue, and also has ended up creating diseases that shouldn't have been an issue simply by the choices we've made along the way. And believe me, I'm not trying to ding veterinary medicine as a whole. I think veterinarians have their hearts in what they're doing and they believe that they're doing their best. But Dr. Falconer has found a different path, as I have, and so I wanted him to be able to share some of that with you all today.
Yeah, it's really only dawned on me in the last maybe 10 years or maybe a little longer that the diseases of our day, I've known that for a longer time that the diseases we're dealing with today are the chronic ones, which just means they're stretched out over time. They linger, they're bothersome. The classic example is the allergies. The dogs, especially itching and scratching at their ears, and they're inflamed, and their life is miserable. And I only realized in the last 10 years or so that that's really a man-made disease. It's not something that just dropped out of the sky and landed on your dog and not mine, or, chose to wait for 2 years to show up in your youngster, or started at 10 or started at 1. It's really often following the act of vaccination. So that set me about on a path of teaching, and I said, well, if I don't get out in front of this, I'm going to be forever just fixing one broken dog at a time and not getting ahead of it. So that's why I've gone into teaching.
That's amazing. And you are a great teacher too. I've had the opportunity to listen to the videos in your free workshop that's going on right now, and also to preview the natural rearing course. And your ability to explain difficult concept in a simple way is just outstanding. And I think that that has helped so many people so far, and I'm delighted to be able to help you get that message out to even more people. One of the things we were talking about earlier is that, yeah, there are these dogs, they get vaccinated, they get itchy. But what's fascinating to me is these animals that literally come out of the box itchy, and before they've ever had vaccine one. And often I'll see those symptoms exacerbate after vaccination. But in my scientifically trained mind, that goes back to the concept of epigenetics, and essentially that's how genes are switched on and off, and how the types of proteins that they produce as a result of the different switches being flipped. So we know that that can be affected by how you eat, where you live, what type of water you drink. But what we're finding is that it also is affected by what your mother experienced, what your great grandfather experienced. And because dogs and cats have much shorter generation times than we do, this explosion of chronic disease and misery, and especially in young animals, it's just incredible. And that's the problem, is that in modern medicine we just don't have any tools to really even start to think about that. But homeopathy and many of the techniques you're describing do have some tools to help pets with that.
Yeah, and it's still a struggle, I mean, even as a trained homeopath who's been at it for 30 years, we get some of these allergic guys in, and we're looking at how long's your dog been itching? Well, about 2 years. we're looking at a year's work to get that turned around. It's like turning an ocean liner. So I'm really trying to get as much in front of the whole prevention game as I can and start out with these guys when they're ideally preconception, like you mentioned. So start working on those folks who call themselves natural rearing breeders who are saying, if we have a really healthy breeding stock and they're freed of their chronic disease, when they have offspring, those offspring are going to be way ahead of the gate as far as coming in with a good inheritance, coming in with not these subtle chronic disease tendencies that we can just flip on with one vaccine, but rather have their start in life in a really healthy way. So while we can't do that with everybody, and we certainly applaud those people who grab the rescues out there and pull them off the street or pull them out of the rescue organizations, we've got some challenges. It's not an easy road to go, and prevention can be done in different ways. So what you and I learned in school was one way, and what I'm going back to now is age old, which is called natural rearing. Rearing, just a British word for how do we raise baby? How do we make decisions on the health of bringing up this youngster?
Right.
And that to me has been key.
And that makes absolute sense. And unfortunately, the way we tend to think about medicine and health is repairing damage rather than preventing damage, or sort of preventing a potential issue from rearing its ugly head. And that's what is so amazing about what you're offering. Certainly, homeopathy is part of your things that you discuss and you use, but you're talking just complete lifestyle program, really. And while your course is geared towards breeders, I think you were saying that a lot of those techniques can be applied to rescue animals and pets that are maybe 2 or 3 years old to help improve their situation.
Well, yeah, let me just correct you for a second,
Certainly.
Ruth. Breeders are interested in what this course is about, but it's really aimed at the pet owner.
Great.
And I geared entirely for that. So you don't have to know anything about breeding to benefit from this. And while we're calling it the best way to get a puppy started, it also turns out to apply very well to adult animals. I just had a student from the last course say, I've been breeding this dog on and off, maybe every couple of years, and she's now 10 years old. She's coming in with another litter. And I applied some of these things I learned in the Natural Rearing Roadmap course, and by golly, she's got more milk this time than I've ever seen her with.
Wow.
And she's got a shine to her coat that I don't ever remember her having, and she's 10 years old. And
That's
I just
awesome.
had to smile and go, it applies at any age. We can shift things at any age when we start stepping onto a more natural path.
That's fantastic. And that's exactly it. Even insurmountable issues, if you start with small steps, you can start to see big differences change in these animals. And that's wonderful that lady had such a fantastic experience. I mean, certainly for most of us, a dog at 10 years of age, we're thinking, holy crud, it's like, grandma having a baby. But in truth, many, quality breeders and especially breeders that are working field animals, so active working dogs, they are having litters much later in life because they want to show that this animal really can do this work. So that sounds a little insane to most of us. And then frankly, the other thing is in that particular lady's dog, or bitch, more appropriately called, is that she's intact, and that probably has preserved more of her health than anything.
Yeah. We tend to think it's a one-size-fits-all. I know I did. I said, if you're not in the breeding realm, just everybody should be spayed, everybody should be neutered. And look what we've learned just in the last 5 years or so about the ill effects of that.
Yeah.
So there's really all these decisions that stack one upon another, right? It's like, what am I going to feed? How often, if I'm going to vaccinate? Am I going to neuter? All these things. What am I going to do about fleas? What am I going to do about heartworms? the more you stack these things in a good, healthy, natural way, the more you've got a dog who's just shining back at you saying, thanks, I feel great. I don't care if I'm 10 years old or, I'm going for 12 or I'm going for 14 and, let's go show off outside. These animals become magnetic. You've seen this, Ruth, I'm
Yes.
sure. It's like you can't resist getting your fingers in their fur and going, wow, you've done some amazing work on this animal.
And that's the absolute truth. I mean, the biggest tool I've started all of our clients with is food. I mean, that if you can't fix an unhealthy situation when that animal is on a bad diet. It's just not going to happen. And unfortunately, that takes a lot of wrapping our heads around different concepts, especially for old horses like me. It took me a long time to figure that out for myself as well as for pets. But you've been on that track for quite some time. So one of the big things, I mean, I think the difficulty with vaccinations is that, with rabies vaccine in particular, there's a legal component to it. Years and years and years and years ago, rabies was an enormous problem. And that's Pepe telling us that he agrees it's a big problem and he does not like the shot in the behind. Thank you very much. But it clearly has an impact. I mean, Dr. Dodd's research starting 20-some years ago showed there was an issue with thyroid function. I mean, these are not innocuous things. And unfortunately, there's also very little rational discussion about vaccines, whether it's people or animals. So it's sort of dogmatic, if you'll pardon the pun, on either side. So to that end, I was telling you about a client that wrote in, and she's had a dog that died of cancer, and so she's tried to minimize her pet's exposure to vaccinations, chemicals, and all of those sorts of things. But unfortunately, her dog got a hold of a raccoon, and the dog got scratched somewhere in the process, and the raccoon was not acting right. Oddly, her Department of Health official came out and shot the raccoon and then said, yep, looks like it's rabid, so your dog will need a booster vaccine. So what I mean, God, well, that's insane. A, number one, it probably had distemper, and B, it should have been tested. And here's this lady sort of caught between rock and a hard place. Dog just had its vaccination. I think the rabies compendium has changed to some degree, where some departments of health will allow a tighter test to show that, yeah, this dog is protected against rabies, but that often takes 4 to 6 weeks to get that test result back. So in the meantime, she's getting pressured. So what could you offer her as far as suggestions? If it looks like she will need to vaccinate, but as far as trying to protect this dog's health from over-vaccination?
Well, I think it's a lot of times, unfortunately, the educated pet owner is going to be the smarter person on the block compared to the average animal control person who just kind of has a lockstep, here's what we do when this happens. And the compendium, as you mentioned, on animal rabies, that's put out by the state veterinarians and the public health veterinarians, just came out last year and says, here's the guidelines if your animal is bitten. Here's your guidelines if your animal bites somebody.
Right.
And if this animal, I think you told me, has a history of rabies vaccines, so the evidence is high that animal is probably immune to rabies for life, and that's measurable. They can take a blood draw on that dog and say, let's run a titer, and I'll bet you dollars to donuts that titer is very high, meaning the dog is protected against rabies. And one of the things I'll often have people do is actually download that compendium. You can probably find a link for it and share it with your readers. I've got it on my website. I've even I can give you a link to get that for your folks as well. I've highlighted some sections which say you have a choice, and one of them is quarantine at home. It's not a given that you're absolutely only one choice, which is vaccinate again. I think they do like to vaccinate if they know it was a rabid animal, but as you say, we don't know that about this raccoon, and the raccoon is no longer here to test. So it's a tough one.
It is. It is. So, and hopefully she'll be able to work something out with the state folks and use a quarantine rather than revaccinating. Um, and I know in my practice I use a mother tincture of thuya, so just the actual stuff. Whereas I know other veterinarians will use lissom and several other remedies as well post-vaccination to help minimize the impact. And so that may be another consideration for her too. But it just highlights the craziness going on out there without the
Yeah,
rational
it does.
discussion.
Yeah, it does. And the more educated you are on these things, the better off you are because, like I say, oftentimes you'll be the smarter voice in the room. And when you've got a document like the compendium to refer to, and another one people often forget, and it's an argument that may fall on deaf ears unless you're talking to the right person, is your dog in any kind of illness state? In other words, on a special diet, allergic to things and can't eat certain foods, that's a state of not healthy. And every vaccine, rabies included, says on the label only for use in healthy dogs, cats, ferrets, whatever the species are. And you can bring that to the discussion as well. Say, my animal's been vaccinated, and it hasn't been healthy really in the definition of that word for some time. We're dealing with itchiness, or we're dealing with recurrent ear infections, and unless we feed this special diet or give this, special medicine, hypothyroid is a common example. My dog's on thyroid medication every day. Well, that's not healthy. That's an abnormal state. So those animals should be exempt just on the basis of a veterinarian saying, oh, yeah, I've got a labeled vaccine for healthy only. You've got a dog who's not well. Therefore, we shouldn't vaccinate. Let's draw some blood. Let's get it tighter. We can easily prove this animal's got immunity and just sidestep the whole one more shot kind of idea.
That's great advice, and that's something most veterinarians are willing to think through so that they can stay within the letter of the law, but also do their best to keep that pet healthy. So that's fantastic. Uh, what in your course, the Natural Rearing Roadmap, you approach kind of everything from the perspective of what can we do to keep this pet healthy by keeping it away from the things that are potentially harmful. And in fact, in your workshop, 4-part workshop that's been ongoing called Won't Get Fooled Again, you hit several of those topics. And so, the big ones are, food, obviously, minimizing or avoiding vaccines altogether. What are the big take-home messages that your students have enjoyed that have taken your natural rearing roadmap? What are the big points that made big differences for them?
Well, I think one of them is that just to know that you've got the complete power and ability with learning just a few simple step-by-step ideas and kind of getting it deeply. That especially happens when there's a group around you learning at the same time, which is what we love about the course. We're discussing things on a private Facebook group, and I have live Q&A calls as part of the training. So there's no time when you're stuck and you feel all alone and I don't know enough. And so what we see over and over again is people start applying this stuff even in baby steps. And you know yourself, if you change the diet to a healthier one, you'll see an outcome within days to weeks as opposed to, waiting for months or years. You'll see something right now. So there's a lot of ahas in this course. People go, well, yeah, you're right. Wait a minute. I don't get a postcard every year or every 3 years saying I should come in for another smallpox shot. And I explain why that is, that this immunity to virus vaccines is, say the immunologists, a long-lasting thing. It's not gone tomorrow or gone next year or gone 3 years from now. The odds are the immunity lasts for life. So when these wheels start to turn and we start to see, there is a common sensical ground on people who've studied the science, then we've got a framework to make decisions from. So that's what we're really helping people do in the natural rearing roadmap is say, here's the basis in science. We've got studies published in mainstream journals saying if an animal came in with an autoimmune disease, and we look back in the history, we can often find that a month prior they got their shots, and now they're in the ER eating up their red blood cells like they're foreign viruses. So when you start to pile this knowledge one piece at a time, you go, well, it's silly for me to keep vaccinating. There's no logic to that. I've likely got an animal who's immune. Say my animal's 6 years old and had 3 or 4 years worth of shots. That immunity is finished. Well, that's a breath of relief. People go, oh, okay, now I understand the science behind it. It's coming from people who don't sell vaccines. They study them. That's the veterinary immunologists, and they've known for a couple decades about long-lasting immunity. And we get people like you and saying, here's a way easy at home to change the diet around. Start doing this thing and start getting off the cereal grain and the kibble that's such a common food but such an unnatural one when we look at how an animal, a dog, is made. We've got teeth that are there like a carnivore's teeth. Well, that's because they came from the wolf. They are carnivores by nature. So we start to think in those logic terms and start to change small things and see, wow, look at that coat. It just came 3 shades of shinier.
Yes.
And look at that sweet breath and that beautiful gleaming white teeth. Those things are apparent to everybody. And you see them and you go, okay, I know I'm on the right path.
That's amazing. That's great. And that's it, giving people the ability to be confident about the choices they're making because they know they're backed up by science and rational thought. That's fantastic. Dr. Will, anything else you would like folks to know about about your course and about what it stands for?
Well, I think it's really all about helping the pet owners to have a framework to work in, to raise their animals. Rearing is raising, to raise them in the most natural way possible and have the best outcome. We really all are in having dogs in our lives for one main reason. We want the joy that they bring us. And they bring us the most joy and those around us the most joy when they're really healthy, right? It's those animals whose life is impinged by illness that get out of that joyful place, and now we're becoming a constant caretaker and they're waking us up at night with their scratching. I want to help people avoid all that.
Yes.
And have that joy that we got into dog relationships to begin with. That's the most valuable thing we can give a person, is to say, here's how we keep this animal really in shiny health, ideally from an early age, but even starting at 6 or starting at 8 or starting at 10, it doesn't matter.
Right.
That's why we're here.
That's wonderful. Well, I'm going to put a link below the video that will get you guys access to the free 4-part workshop and also allow you to get more information about the natural rearing course. And the opportunity to enroll in that course is going to come to a close here very shortly on December 9th. So it's important to get in, check this out, get your pets enrolled. You've made it easier for people to enroll in the course financially by offering to divide the payments up into 6 different payments rather than one chunk. And I will say that, this is an investment, and it is an investment in your pet's health. And once you learn these techniques, you can apply them to whatever dog or dogs are present in your home now, as well as any dogs that come in the future. And because I believe so strongly this is a fantastic opportunity to change your dog's health status and improve its life, I'm also going to give my gut health course, which is often, I'm sure you're fixing a lot of that, but I want to throw that course in because it's a fairly direct way to improve gut health within a quick period of time. And, if you, as you said earlier, if somebody's been experiencing disease for 2-3 years, we want it to be better tomorrow, but in fact, it may take several months. So we have to have that patience and knowledge to know that we're going to see small steps. But I think that gut health program will be a great adjunct. And I think you've got some bonuses as well, or a bonus in course along with this too.
Yeah, I've got a couple of neat ones. So I had a trainer come on board for the puppy owners, the new puppy owners, and she's given us a module of 4 lessons about how to do the right start with your puppy training.
Fantastic.
And then I just decided at the last minute that we really, people need to know about these things called nosodes, which have been studied for, oh gosh, a good 100 years, if not longer, which are natural ways of preventing the infectious diseases that we worry about, things like distemper and parvo, especially in the youngsters. So I've given a module of that away, and you'll get up to speed on an area a lot of people are confused on. I see misinformation all over the net about what are nosodes and do I give them yearly instead of yearly vaccines, and I've explained all that. That's a bonus just for joining us. So there's a lot of good stuff in there that we've kind of piled the value in, and I think it's a really key point that you're investing in your future with dogs. Not only this dog or this next pup that you're getting, what you'll learn stays with you. And people say, I'm referring to your notes from this course on a regular basis, and I've got them for life. They don't go away. Access once you enroll in the course is yours for life. So if you're not a puppy owner yet, but next year you fall in love and you go, I'm going to start out right and do this particular animal the best, most natural way from the get-go, you've got the resource there at your hands. You just get on the internet, you watch a couple of lessons, or you download the notes and you've got them in a notebook. They're yours for life.
That's great, and that's fantastic. Dr. Will, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Again, Dr. Will Falconer from Vital Path Animal, and I'm Dr. Ruth Roberts, the creator of the original Crock-Pot diet. Will is a great resource in the veterinary world and a voice for rational reason, I think, as well. So many, many thanks for your time today. And we'll have links below where you can register for not only for the Won't Get Fooled Again course, but also get more information about the Natural Rearing Roadmap course. And I'll put that link as well for the Rabies Compendium so folks can get that access to that easily. And again, folks, information is knowledge and power, and the more information you have, the more you can use it not only to be a voice for your pet, but for all dogs and cats going forward. So many thanks, and hope to talk soon, Will.
Thanks, Ruth. Pleasure being with you.
Indeed.